Welcome back to another explainer on business fundamentals. Today, we're taking a calm, data-driven look at an area where, honestly, almost everybody gets it wrong: monetization. If you're building a product, launching a service, or running a SaaS business, we're going to fundamentally shift your mindset from building first to pricing first. We've distilled some core research on monetizing innovation into practical, working frameworks that you can apply literally today. Let's dive right in.
So here's our syllabus for today. We'll cover the Build First pricing trap, 3 frameworks that actually work, the 4 pricing failures, a price first validation loop, where pricing theory breaks, and wrap up with your task for today.
All right, Section 1, the Build First pricing trap. Let's start by dismantling the single most common mistake founders make, long before a single line of code is written. I want you to answer this honestly for a second. When do you actually set your price? If you're like most founders, you decide it last. It's kind of treated as an afterthought, right? You spend months, maybe even years, building a product, adding features, boxing it all up, and then, right before launch, you sit in a room and ask, so, what should we charge for this thing? It's a wild asymmetry of precision. You engineer the product with absolute exactness, but you completely guess on the revenue.
Well, that guesswork leads us directly to a pretty terrifying number: 72%. That is the failure rate of new products. It's a staggering figure, and according to the source research, this massive failure rate is driven largely by one catastrophic assumption: waiting until the very end to figure out what people will actually pay for the thing you just built. When you build first and price last, you're essentially just hoping for a market rather than engineering for one.
The main symptom of this late-stage pricing is falling back on really bad habits. Things like cost-plus pricing, where you just tally up your expenses and slap a 20% margin on top, or competitor matching, where you just blindly charge whatever the other guy is charging. Both of these are dangerous traps, mostly because neither of them factors in what your specific customer actually values. The only sustainable approach here is uncovering your customer's willingness to pay, or WTP, before you build.
Which brings us to Section 2, 3 frameworks that work. Let's draw directly from our source material's core principles and apply them to some modern examples.
Framework number 1 is all about that willingness to pay. WTP is simply the highest price a customer considers reasonable for the specific value you deliver. A brilliant historical example of this is Gillette's entry into the Indian market. They didn't just take their expensive US razors, ship them over, and cross their fingers. Nope. Instead, they did the research first and discovered the market had a strict WTP of 15 rupees. So, Gillette went back to the drawing board and designed an entirely new razor from scratch, with only the features that fit that exact 15 rupee price point. They literally designed the product around the price.
Moving to Framework 2. Good, better, best tiering. This one relies heavily on the concept of building fences. Take a modern AI copywriting SaaS, for example. You don't just dump all your features into one giant bucket. You tier them out. The good tier might have basic templates, while the better tier adds custom tones. But notice the best tier. It strictly reserves API access. That API access acts as a fence. It practically forces your enterprise clients to upgrade and completely stops them from cannibalizing your cheaper tiers.
Then we have Framework 3, which is willingness to pay segmentation. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that your audience isn't divided by age or income demographics. They are divided by what they value. In our boutique coffee subscription example, one segment is going to pay strictly for premium quality beans. Another segment, they couldn't care less about rare beans, but they will pay a massive premium for next-day delivery. If you try to build an average product for all of them, you end up satisfying no one. You have to segment by what they are actually willing to pay for.
All right, Section 3, the 4 pricing failures. Because when you ignore these frameworks and don't price first, products die.
And according to the source material, these failures don't just happen randomly. They generally fall into a specific taxonomy. Using our own original labels to categorize the source's findings, we can classify these failures into 4 distinct types. We've got the feature pileup, the tiny upgrade, the buried gem, and the Walking Dead product. If you spent any time at all in product development, you're unfortunately going to recognize at least one of these.
So, looking at how this breaks down, we see the feature pileup, which the source calls feature shock. This is where you cram way too many features into a one-size-fits-all product, making it overpriced and super confusing. Then there's the tiny upgrade, or minnovation, which is having the right product but lowballing your targets, leaving massive revenue on the table. The buried gem is a product that never gets properly launched because it sits outside the company's comfort zone. And finally, The Walking Dead. This is a product built to answer a question that literally no one was asking.
Section 4. The price-first validation loop. So how do we actually avoid building a Walking Dead product?
How do we practically test price before writing a single line of code? Well, we use a validation loop. This actionable 4-step loop is your ultimate safeguard. Step 1. Pitch the value first, not the product. Explain the exact problem you solve. Step 2. Ask what they consider an acceptable price. Step 3. Ask what price would be so high that it's prohibitive. And Step 4. Honestly, this is the most important part. Ask why. Doing this frames the entire conversation around value, and it pinpoints the psychological price thresholds of your potential customers, all without needing a finished product.
And this loop brilliantly highlights one of the biggest dangers during validation, the average trap. Imagine you've got one large segment willing to pay $20 and another large segment willing to pay $100. The mathematical average there is $60. But if you build a product priced at $60, you've just created a total disaster. You've priced out the low end who only have $20, and you've left $40 of pure profit on the table from the high end. Never, ever build for the average. Build tiered products for the distribution.
Moving on to Section 5, where pricing theory breaks. While these foundational principles hold true, we do need to critically analyze how they fare in today's hyper-competitive landscape.
Our modern critique of this theory really centers on the danger of the good tier. You see, in today's saturated SaaS and product markets, companies are terrified of losing users, right? So they pack their entry-level good tier with way too much value. But here's the catch. If your entry-level product is too generous, modern consumers are just going to stay there. They will never upgrade to your better or best tiers. You might land the customer, sure, but you'll permanently stall your expansion and completely kill your profitability. You really have to ruthlessly protect the fences between your tiers.
And finally, Section 6, your task for today. We've covered the traps, the frameworks, and the failures. Now it's time to actually put this into action for your own business. Let's get to your homework.
Your task today is to take a hard look at your product roadmap. I want you to ruthlessly categorize your features. What is a leader that drives actual willingness to pay? What's just a filler that looks nice but adds absolutely no monetary value? And what is a killer feature that is actually turning people away? Kill what doesn't drive value and start designing your next build entirely around the price. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If you had to double your price tomorrow, what exactly would you have to build today to make your customers happy to pay it?